Someday somebody's gonna make you wanna turn around and say goodbye. Till smile like a willow tree.
Holy and beautiful the custom which brings us together in the presence of the Most High. We simply bow with gratitude to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened and strengthened. Through this hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. Three unseen guests attend: faith, hope, and love. Let our hearts now prepare them a place. We'd like to invite now Chris Fields Figueroa and her daughter Olivia to light our chalice this morning.
Good morning, all souls.
Good morning, all souls. We light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek.
In the search for truth, may we be just.
In the search for justice, may we be loving.
And in loving, may we find peace.
Good morning, all souls. For our opening hymn this morning, it is a repeated chant, and the layers are layered on top of one another in a slow and repetitive fashion. I hope that you will pick one line to join in singing and settle in with your coffee and enjoy our opening hymn this morning. The lyrics will scroll on the screen as the video plays. Welcome.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Good morning. Welcome to All Souls Church. My name is Morgan Duncan, and I get to be your worship associate this morning. Since 1821, the members of this church have been walking together toward an important place, a place that Martin Luther King called the beloved community. We are moving ever forward toward a place where the walls that separate us fall away so that we can stand together as one human family. With joy and determination, we walk this path together, regardless of where you began your journey, how much or how little you carry with you, or with whom you choose to hold hands along the way. We are all going there to lend our hands to the creation of a diverse, justice-seeking, spirit-growing community that is true to the dream of all souls. We invite you to join us on this grand adventure. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those of you who are visiting this morning. We're glad you're with us. Feel free to let us know in the chat where you're viewing us from and if you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter. We move now to our moment of beholding. As the music plays, scroll through the Zoom gallery and share a wave or a greeting in the chat with some of the other folks who are part of the great family of All Souls.
Let's begin.
Hey, whoa, hey, yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I'm taking my freedom.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dolores Miller, the Director of Religious Education. The All Souls theme for December is ritual. A ritual is a series of actions performed repeatedly, usually that make us feel secure or satisfied or comforted. Some of our most important rituals happen around bedtime. In a warm, cozy room, there was a telephone and a red balloon and a picture of a cow jumping over the moon. There were 3 little bears sitting on chairs and 2 little kittens and a pair of mittens and a little toy house and a young mouse and a comb and a brush and a bowl full of mush, and a quiet old lady whispering, hush.
Good night, room.
Good night, moon. Good night, cow jumping over the moon. Good night, phone. Good night, red balloon. Good night, bears. Good night, chairs. Good night, kittens.
Good night, mittens.
Good night, little house. Good night, little house. Good night, comb. Good night, brush.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mush.
And good night to the old lady, whispering, hush.
Good night, all souls. I mean, good morning. I'm Reverend Rob Keithan. I have the honor of serving as your minister for social justice. Even in these COVID times, All Souls has a lot going on. And I should say, if you're feeling discombobulated or disconnected with All Souls or your life in general, it's okay. These are strange times. That said, if you are intentional about participating in a class or a small group ministry, we think it'll help. So here are a few updates and invitations. First, a reminder that we offer religious education for children and youth every Sunday, beginning at 9:30 a.m. And in addition to that, other activities are planned and can be found on the church's website and in the e-newsletter. We also have many offerings from our incredible adult spiritual development team, explorations of poems, book groups, and starting this Tuesday, December 8th, a 2-session experience facilitated by psychotherapist and ASD committee member Claudia Esteve, entitled Making Friends with Our Emotions. You can find out about these offerings and more on the Adult Spiritual Development page on the website under Spirituality. And my monthly drop-in covenant group meets tomorrow from 1 to 2:30 p.m. to reflect on December's theme, which is ritual. The Zoom info is on the homepage and all are welcome. And we have a lot of regular and special holiday events this month. Our monthly Vespers service is this Wednesday, December 9th at 7:30. And we're excited to announce a special new event, a Solstice Stroll, on Sunday, December 20th from 2 to 5 p.m. In anticipation of the longest night of the year, join us in community on the outdoor grounds of the church. We'll have a meditation labyrinth open at noon. And then from 2 to 5, join us for a night and light tableau, a luminary walk, live music with a jazz combo, and a bonfire. The event will conclude with a solstice blessing of community and sanctuary at 5:02 p.m., exactly 12 hours before the winter solstice. It's an all ages event. It's free and socially distanced. So per DC's COVID guidelines, registration is required. Please register for one of the hour-long time slots on the homepage. We turn now to our pastoral concerns, and we start with an institutional concern for Middle Collegiate Church in New York City, our longtime partner on interfaith racial justice organizing and also the Revolutionary Love Conference this past April. I'm very sad to report that Middle Collegiate Sanctuary and perhaps their entire church was destroyed by a massive fire early Saturday morning that spread from a vacant building next door. Their building is a pillar in their community and has stood on that spot since 1892. So our hearts go out to our siblings in faith as they grieve the loss of their sacred space. And here at All Souls, we offer our deepest condolences to Chris Green on the death of his mother a few weeks ago. Our hearts go out to Chris, Mary, and their children, Sean and Iris, and Chris's entire family. In the silence that follows, please say aloud the names of those you carry on your heart this morning. Spirit of life and love, God that we know by many names. In a time with so many challenges, with so much that is different, remind us of the strength, the creativity, and the resolve that endures. As we grieve the rituals and traditions we must set aside this year, help us find new ways to connect, new ways to celebrate that that which we hold dear. And remind us, dear Spirit, that every sunrise brings a new day and new possibilities. Amen.
A Ritual to Read to Each Other by William E. Stafford. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail. But if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep.
I didn't grow up with the book Goodnight Moon. So when Dolores proposed it as the story for all ages today, I asked, what's that got to do with the December theme of ritual? Her wise response to me was to simply buy me a copy of the book. So when I visited my granddaughters at Thanksgiving, I brought my copy of Goodnight Moon. And although they are too young right now to fully appreciate it, I read it to them, and they appeared to listen intently, watching as I touched the things around them and said, "Good night, crib. Good night, favorite Binky. Good night, rubbery, slobbery thing. Good night, Runa. Good night, Ellis." Children appreciate routine, but even more than that, they have a natural understanding of ritual. And I realized why that book has had such staying power since it was released in 1947. It creates a kind of blessing of objects as a way of thanking them and calling them and us to rest. It's because of the power of ritual to shape and sustain us. The reason for choosing ritual as our theme for the month of December is fairly obvious. This is a season of the year when we turn to rituals almost instinctively. Our pre-religious ancestors knew that daylight appeared to be lessening and that the nights lengthened, and that the winter solstice was a time of rich, deep darkness, making the stars and moon appear that much brighter in the night sky. Christianity, of course, adopted these ancient rituals and featured the birth of its most prominent star, Jesus, around the winter solstice. Judaism's Hanukkah, which begins this Thursday evening, remembers an ancient victory over oppression through the lighting of menorah candles. But even more than these are the personal, secular markers which have come to frame this season. So for me, Christmas is not to begin until after Santa Claus comes down Fifth Avenue in the Macy Day Thanksgiving Parade. And all stores who put their Christmas stuff on the shelves by Halloween incur my wrath and ire. No Christmas songs are to be played until after the big dude arrives. Of course, I have other rituals. I did have watching Christmas Story with my family, reciting and calling out the lines from that story in chorus were all part of what used to make this season bright for me. But as Rob Keithan said in the prayer this morning, many of the rites and the rituals which we normally do during this season must change. With the latest spike in cases, it's very likely that many of us will be staying home and telling our kids that Santa will be zooming into our homes this year. And the things that we may have grumbled about in the past, the crowds at the malls, the nonstop Christmas songs over the airways, having to buy gifts for people that we barely knew, well, we may now look at those things with a certain degree of nostalgia, remembering that, well, the malls weren't really all that bad. And well, I don't know, I kind of like Grandma got run over by a reindeer, hearing that over and over again while shopping for that white elephant gift. But let's acknowledge that for many, The holiday season is difficult enough as it is, but this pandemic has heaped a whole new level of grief. I realize that since the pandemic began, I've lost 8 colleagues this year, all non-COVID related deaths. And while some of these colleagues were closer to me than others, their deaths have left a hole. And the reality of that for over 250,000 Americans who have lost their lives to this virus, their families, their friends will be mourning their absence. The usual rituals which we create to acknowledge death and to grieve in person have been temporarily taken from us as well. And while I have found the online memorials surprisingly moving and meaningful, it is no substitute for our bodies grieving together in real proximity. And speaking of grief, I just have to add my own sense of loss of the fire that likely destroyed Middle Collegiate Church in New York City, our sibling congregation in spirit. I wrote to their senior pastor yesterday and told her, on behalf of All Souls, we will stand by and with them and lend our support as they grieve and mourn and rebuild. But I've been thinking a lot about the role that ritual plays in our personal lives and our life together as a religious community, especially at a time when we cannot enact those usual rituals around this season. So without going into a long anthropological explanation of ritual, let me just briefly define the word. Ritual, as understood in religious terms, are those enactments, behaviors, gestures, habits, traditions, which deepen your understanding of meaning. Rituals connect us to the mystery that is self, that is other, and to the transcendent mystery that is beyond our comprehension. Rituals mark time. They create a space in ephemeral time and say, this moment is important. They also tether us to the transcendent, and they can be framed as grand religious enactments such as Christmas Eve or Easter Mass, or the culmination of a Yom Kippur service, or they can be as simple as sitting zazen, having a ceremonial tea, walking the labyrinth in quiet contemplation. They can be done every day in your home, or they can be created over time in church. And of course, all of the above. So one of my tasks as your interim is to explore your history and how that history has shaped your identity. The rituals a church enacts are a form of communication. They say, this is important to us, to this community. And my task is to find out why. Where did these rituals come from? What do they mean? What role do they play in the identity of a congregation? So I was fortunate this week to be able to ask those questions of some All Souls members who participated in the drop-in group to talk about ritual. And I told them in advance they were going to be my beta test group for this morning's sermon. Tell me, I asked, tell me about what rituals you think are important to you around the holiday season here at All Souls. Ringing the bells, one member said. Say more, I said. Every Christmas Eve, when we sing Angels We Have Heard on High, we ring bells. Everybody brings a bell or they're given a bell, and it's so loud. The sanctuary is just full of bell sounds. Silent night, another said. We darken the sanctuary and we light our candles. And in the darkness of a full sanctuary, candles are lit one by one. We sing together. And that's when I know Christmas has really begun. And other things too were named as important. While not a ritual, they're like ritual objects. The beautifully decorated Christmas tree, the way the church looks and smells during the holiday season. These are all touchstones that mark the time, knowing that like time, The season will be over. The decorations will soon go down, and we then go into what the Christian calendar calls ordinary time for a while. So, All Souls, I want you to know that while we can't recreate all of these beloved rituals in person, we are reinventing them. We will still have 2 Christmas Eve services at 7 and 10, as usual. The 7 p.m. service will feature the Christmas pageant. Yes, you heard it right, the Christmas pageant. It won't be perhaps the chaotic scramble you may be used to, but it will be heartwarming nevertheless. And at 7 p.m., you'll still hear the organ. And in the darkness of your own living rooms, you'll light a candle with several hundred other All Souls and sing Silent Night together, just as always. And of course, as you heard, we're creating a new ritual, the Solstice Stroll, to enjoy music, the labyrinth, and to connect with the church while being physically, but not emotionally or spiritually distant from one another. These rituals that we do, they're imbued with meaning, not imbued by some distant deity, but because they have the power to shape our lives. So I asked the group, beyond the holiday season, what are some ritual elements of your own church liturgy that members expect every week? One person answered immediately, said Spirit of Life. We have sung Spirit of Life every Sunday for over 20 years. But then I thought to myself, what if your next minister or ministers wanted to change that? What if they wanted to sing something else instead? Would that be a deal breaker? Well, as an interim, I've learned the hard way that even for ritually allergic Unitarian Universalists, there are some touchstones of every worship life, of every congregation that has grown deep roots in the life of that congregation. So what other rituals, I asked, do you think are important to members of All Souls? Someone said carrying the chalice in during the processional. But then another member jumped in and said, I've never liked the fact that we light the chalice from the back of the sanctuary, sort of hidden away. I've always thought it should be lit in the presence of the community. Yes, I said, as if the fire of commitment of the gathered ignite the flame and begin that portion of the worship service. Rituals are deeply embedded, and rituals change. COVID-19 has both upended many beloved traditions and rituals, and it has forced the innovation of many more. So while I would always prefer to be with you in the ritual known as All Souls worship, crisis does create opportunity and innovation. And so I've been thinking about how we might create new rituals post-COVID in a world that will certainly include both our online and in-person worship. How can we include, welcome, support, and sustain members who are not physically present? For now, the grand spectacle of corporate worship must give way to this kind of worship, quieter, smaller, but no lesser form of ritual gathering. In fact, people are figuring out all kinds of ways to create rituals in their homes and with friends. And one of the book discussions being offered this month was the inspiration for the theme. And it is this one, Power of Ritual. Turning everyday activities into soulful practices. And in that book, Casper Turkuel invites his readers to think beyond the traditional, that the ordinary things we do can be transformed into sacred ritual by our awareness and our attention. We can read, or perhaps we can practice Lectio Divina, sacred reading, by savoring instead of speed reading through text. We can create a Sabbath intentionally, whether by walking away from our computers or investing time in nature without our ever-present cell phones. And of course, mealtime can be a ritual of attention and presence, of gratitude and grace. It's all available to us if we pay attention. So I encourage you to consider attending the adult spiritual development class Unterkuhl's book, to think about the ways in which ritual can ground and sustain you, particularly during this season when everything is changed. One of the rituals I've always appreciated about All Souls liturgy is All Souls penchants for poetry as sacred text. Rabbi Chaim Stern once wrote about ritual that it is poetry in action. In other words, quote, ritual does for behavior what poetry does for words. Religious deeds grace ordinary activities, the way that poetic language elevates commonplace communication. I'm going to repeat that again, just sort of sit with that for a minute. Ritual does for behavior what poetry does for words. Religious deeds grace ordinary activities, the way that poetic language elevates commonplace communication. So I want to go back to the poem that Morgan read this morning. Other than the title, this morning's poem at first glance may appear to have little to do with our common understanding of ritual. It's kind of an odd poem, and it's a bit hard to unpack. In some ways, not unlike real rituals that have a mysterious hold on us, even though the elements of any ritual are quite ordinary. Bread, wine, the sounding of a bell, a rose touching the forehead of an infant. Yet when I think about rituals that sustain us, I think about this line, quote, and as elephants parade holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. We can and do create rituals by ourselves that are satisfying and meaningful. But it is in community, I believe, where we essentially hold each other's tail and finally find the park, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. This is what we're doing here, this little ritual as we gather around our screens, trying to stay awake and alert and grateful for being alive, even when so much around us feels to be in peril. It's important, says the poem, for awake people to be awake, for the darkness around us is deep. So when the night is long and you yearn for daybreak, don't be discouraged. Remember to enact this one simple ritual to bundle yourself, a friend, a loved one, your children up and go outside and gaze up into the night sky. First, of course, you must greet the moon, and then look up at that vast sky. And even if the city lights are diminishing the brilliant darkness, discern one star to steady your heartbeat by. Don't miss its brilliance by following the wrong God home, the God of what ifs and what's next. No, instead, just stay your mind and your heart on its constancy and be sustained. And if that is the only ritual you find you can do this season, it will be enough. May it be so.
Someone to hold you too close, someone to hurt you too deep, someone to sit in your chair, to ruin your sleep and make you aware of being alive, being alive. Someone to know you too well. Someone to pull you up short, to put you through hell, and give you support for being alive. Being alive. Being alive. Someone you have to let in. Someone whose feelings you spare. Someone who, like it or not, will want you to share. A little, a lot is being alive. Being alive. Someone to crowd you with love. Someone to force you to care. Someone to make you come through, who'll always be there, as frightened as you of being alive. Being alive. Being alive. Being alive. Somebody hold me too close. Somebody hurt me too deep. Somebody sit in my chair and ruin my sleep and make me aware of being alive. Being alive. Somebody need me too much. Somebody know me too well. Somebody pull me up short and put me through hell and give me support for being alive. Make me alive. Make me confused. Mark me with praise. Let me be used. Bury my days, but alone is alone, not alive. Somebody crowd me with love. Somebody force me to care. Somebody let me come through. I'll always be there, as frightened as you, to help us survive. Being alive. Being alive. Being alive.
I've been doing a lot of proselytizing lately. Yeah, I know. Not really UU endorsed behavior. Still, I have been fortunate enough to have made a number of new acquaintances recently. It is generally a bad idea to open the conversation with someone you don't know with a discussion of comparative religion, but as a friendship ripens, there will come a point in which curiosity about each other's spirituality will occur naturally. So I'll be asked about my religion, and I will say that I'm a Unitarian Universalist. This is often met with blank stares. My response to their looks of confusion, though, is a smile of anticipated pleasure. Few things please me more than being able to talk about Unitarianism in general or All Souls in specific. I am happy to talk about a religion that can be clearly understood in 8 principles. I'm happy to talk about our bell and our building and about all the history that has occurred beneath that spire. I'm happy to mention our music and our religious education and our inspiring ministry. I am happy to describe the bright, active, talented, compassionate, diverse congregation. But I am most proud when I get to talk about all the real world, tangible work that we do, not just in our church, but our neighborhood and our nation, to talk about the various ways we at All Souls can be seen acting out our principles on a daily basis. Perhaps proselytizing is not a traditional Unitarian activity, but with a place this good, I kind of can't help myself. I do more than talk about All Souls, though. I give as generously as I can. I hope you will too. On the screen and in the chat, you will find a link to be able to give in real time. This morning's offering will now be received.
Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill wide the sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end.
I close with these words, which are spoken at the end of every board meeting, a kind of ritual closing that says, keep alert, stand firm in your faith, be courageous, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. Our worship is ended. Let our service begin.
I bow